So when it's hard to say I'm sorry, we're talking about, as you can tell, the 4 sides of forgiveness. If you've missed some of the sermons, they're all on our website. When you go to the website, you'll see a picture of the sanctuary. Click on that, and that'll be today's sermon, we hope. And if you go to the audio section, all those sermons will be there in order, and the titles there, so you can find out which ones you might have missed. So let me just ask a rhetorical question. Do you have a good handle on forgiveness? Do you have it pretty well down pat in your life, and you're feeling like, I bet you I could sleep through this sermon all the way to communion because I have this down pat? If we all say, yeah, then let's just go to communion. That's what I'd say. This is a series that we're taking a look at for the last 3 weeks, and we'll wrap up the Sunday after Christmas before we start the new year on this subject. The idea I've come up with and I'm hoping to portray to you is that we'll take a closer look at the concept of forgiveness so that we can live it out more effectively in our daily lives. When it comes to us, when someone comes to us and asks us to forgive them, we have the opportunity to be Christ-like, and we have the opportunity to be benevolent. We have the opportunity to be gracious and noble and say, of course I'll forgive you. We talked about that last time. But there's the other side of the coin. When we haven't been benevolent and we haven't been magnanimous and we haven't been Christ-like and we haven't been gracious as the offender, then we have to go to them and ask for their forgiveness for our actions. Yowzer. I can speak with some authority on this because I've had a lot of practice of asking people to forgive me. There are situations in which a conflict will occur between two people, and honestly, both parties need to ask each other for forgiveness for their actions and for the way they treated each other and for the things they have said. But today, I don't want to address that. I want to address the subject of the situation where you and you alone need to ask for forgiveness. Those times when we've been wrong, those times when we've been completely wrong, those times when there's no question about who's wrong, those times that we need to ask for forgiveness, those times we are just out there and need to take care of it. So how do we seek forgiveness in these situations? How do we seek forgiveness when we've been the wrong person? Let me tell you a general truth. The general truth of the matter is we don't. When we're wrong and we know we're wrong and we know we should ask forgiveness, the general truth is we don't do anything about it. And that causes the person who's the offendee to become more upset and for a hardened, festered heart in our own lives because we know we need to take care of something, but we just put it off. And that becomes a very unhealthy thing, spiritually speaking, for us. And we put it off because we are stubborn people. And we put it off because we tend to be proud people. And we keep from apologizing or saying I'm sorry or saying forgive me. And I want to say when that happens, it takes such an incredible toll on our family, our children, and our marriages and our relationships when we just simply won't say forgive me. Andrew, my big, tall, 6'4", United States Air Force son, I know I can't have a favorite, but he is my favorite third son. I always tell him, you're my favorite third son. I told my first son, he's my favorite first son. It's okay to do that, right? Sure. So anyway, I remember when he was, 10 or 11 or 12 or 13 or 14 or 15, that I said something to him And I said it in anger, and I said it rather pointedly, and I knew when I said it that was a stupid thing to say. And, but being a pastor and being a man and being somewhat proud, I just let it go. And then I got pretty convicted about it, and time passed on, and we went back to Louisiana, where he was stationed at the Air Force base there at Barksdale. And so it was hot. It was June or July or August. It was just 100 degrees, 120 degrees, or 150 degrees. It was just terrible. So I remember that I was really under conviction on the flight back. I needed to talk to my son. I was going to do it, and I did do it. And so the opportunity presented itself for us to go down and buy some ice cream. So we took his black Suburban, hot Suburban, down, had the air conditioner on. We drove down to the market, parked in the market, and I said, son, hey, wait a minute, just leave the car running. Let's talk for a second. He said, okay, what's going on, Dad? I said, well, I just really messed up when you were like whatever age you were. And I said some things to you that I just was wrong as I could be on. And I told him what I said. I'm not going to tell you, but I told him what I said, and I said, you know what? I need you. I would like it if you would forgive me, because this has been bothering me for a long time. And he said, oh, sure, Dad. Don't even remember you saying that, but you bet. I'll forgive you right now. I said, you don't remember it? He said, no. I said, I was being mean when I said it. He says, yeah, I know, but I don't remember it. But he forgave me, and then I thought, well, let's get the ice cream and go home and eat some ice cream. He said, well, Dad, let me ask you a couple things about marriage. I'm having a little problem. And at that point in their marriage, we were having a shaky time, and I don't even remember reasons why, but he started asking me some questions about that. We had this long conversation with the engine running, and finally got out, went home. I got the ice cream, went home, and enjoyed it. And I felt so much better having taken care of that. Something I should have taken care of a long time ago. Maybe he would have remembered it. But, it's kind of silly how we just aren't willing to say the things we need to say sometimes. Seriously, we've all been, like I was in Bossier City that day, we've all been in situations where we probably needed to say, I'm sorry, or I want to apologize, or please forgive me, but we for whatever reason, haven't. Now, those of you who have, every time, you can doze a little bit during the sermon, or you can just smile big. It's okay, either way. But here's the truth. If you're there now, and you still need to take care of business, remember this. You can't park where you are. You just can't. It's a no park zone. You can't park. It's not free parking like in Monopoly. You can't park where you are. You can't stay where you are. We can't live in an unforgiving situation. And the truth is, if you do, we can't grow in Christ there. It puts up the roadblocks to our growing in Christ. So let's see what we can discover about how to take care of this thing of saying, I want you to forgive me. So the first thing I want to look at today is 3 sobering can'ts. And the first can't is we can't undo anything. We can't undo anything. When we ask someone to forgive us of the hurt that we've caused them, most of the time it's a piece of cake. Like my son Andrew, yeah, no problem, Dad. I don't remember it anyway. And they take it without hesitation. They just do it. But here's a serious can't. Even though Andrew forgave me of what I said, and forgave me completely and totally and unequivocally, we've never brought it up. We talk several times a week, and he's never brought it up again. But here's the truth. Him forgiving me can't make it go away. Whatever we do, whatever we say, those things still happen. I remember one time when, Andrew's the brunt of this one, but I remember when Andrew smarted off to his mom. I wouldn't tolerate that in the kids. He was about 6. He smarted off to his mom, so anybody here from CSD? Because if you are, cut this out for a minute, David. So when I found out about it, I just took him and I swatted him a couple times on the hind end. I just did. I'm sorry, but I know it's wrong, but I just did it because I felt like it. Pop, pop, pop. And he cried. And I said, do you understand why I did this? He said, I didn't do it. Thought it was Matthew. I go, what? He said, it was Matt. I go, you're not telling me the truth. He said, ah. So I went to ask his mom, and sure enough, it was Matt. And so I thought, what am I going to do here? So what do? I'm so sorry. Will you forgive me? And then I popped Matt a couple times. But, so, the thing is, even though Andrew forgave me for paddling him then, the truth is, I still paddled him. Here's what I want you to see, is that even when we're forgiven, the things that we've done, and the things that we've said, and the way we've acted, if they were wrong, they were still wrong. And even though God has forgiven us, and even though the party has forgiven us, we may still face some consequences for those things. We still might face consequences for what we've done. And the reason I share this isn't so that you feel more guilty, but the reason I share this is so that we will ponder our actions, our words, and our attitudes before we do the action or say the thing, so that we don't have to come back and say, will you forgive me? If we just think about what we're doing a little bit more clearly, I know I'm a man, it's hard for me, but I try, then we won't have to ask someone to forgive us. And the truth is, even though Andrew doesn't remember what I said to him as a child, I still remember it. If anyone was around us, they heard it. So we can't undo anything, even when we ask for forgiveness. The second thing is we cannot control someone's willingness to forgive. When we've offended somebody, it's up to us to ask forgiveness. If we've offended them, it's really up to us to ask forgiveness. That's the responsibility we have for being the offender. And they may forgive us, or they may not forgive us. I don't know if you've ever had a situation where you've gone to someone and said, will you forgive me? And they said, not in a million years, or not. Most of the time, it's a piece of cake. They say, sure. But sometimes you'll find that they'll say, no, I'm not going to do it. Now, they're supposed to forgive you. The Bible says they should forgive you. But sometimes it may take them a while to forgive you, just like sometimes it takes us a little while to get over the hurt when we've been hurt. Sometimes they're slow to forgive us because really they're hoping that if they do forgive us, that it would be some kind of an assurance they won't do that to us again. And that's why we're a little reluctant sometimes to forgive. Not that we should be. So we can't control someone's willingness to forgive. In fact, it's a little bit bold for us if you think about it. It's a little bit out there for us in some ways to go and hurt somebody, just hurt them with our words or with our actions or whatever the case is, and just hurt them. And maybe purposely. Maybe we're mad. And so we just hurt them. Not physically, but we verbally or emotionally or some way. And then, after we've hurt them, to go back and ask them to forgive us. Think about that for a minute. Look at it from their point of view. They might say, well, you're the one that hurt me. Why should I forgive you? And they may not forgive us, but it's still our responsibility to go and ask them. If we offend them because we've acting like our old nature and automatically, we can't, it's hard for us. Let me try to say it differently. We can't automatically assume that when we have hurt somebody that they are going to forgive us. And guys, just a word of advice. When you've hurt your wife, maybe by forgetting her birthday, who would do that, right? May 7th, right? No, it's sometime in January. Yeah, January 25th, 27th, somewhere in there. I'll know by the time, that's next month, isn't it? Oh, my goodness. But when we purposely go out of our way to hurt somebody, and we forgot them, and remember this, that when we've hurt our wives, and then we go and ask them to say, honey, I want you to forgive me. And the Bible says you need to do this. Let me just give you a piece of advice and not necessarily say it that way, because it just might make them angrier. They probably already know what the Bible says, and they're wondering what you know about the Bible. So they want to just hear the words, I'm sorry, forgive me, and they may or may not. They should, but again, like us, sometimes we want to hold on for a while. I'm not sure why we do that, but we want to hold on or flatly refuse. So we can't control their responses, but catch this. While we can't control their response, we can control ourselves by going out and putting it on the line and asking for forgiveness. Now that is the right thing to do. The third thing is we can't ignore it. When we've offended somebody, we just can't ignore it. We can't say, I am waiting for a word from God on this. He's already spoken, folks. Take care of it, for crying out loud. If you don't, you may get a chunk of coal under the tree. Even if the other person never, in fact is, what about this? When the other person never even brings it up, maybe I didn't offend them because they've never said anything to me about it. They haven't said anything because they're a little irritated, probably. We can't pretend it didn't happen. It really has to be dealt with. And why do I say that? Because look at this passage of Scripture. Jesus said in Matthew 5, if you are offering your gift at the altar, and there remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift there in front of the altar. First go and be reconciled to your brother, and come and offer your gift. So whether we're the offender or the offendee, let's get it taken care of before we go to the altar of God. Now look at the other verse with me in Romans 12:17, where Paul said, if it is possible, as far as it depends on you, notice it doesn't say them, it says you, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. So we have to make the effort. And when it comes to this thing about hurting someone's feelings, or when it comes to hurting someone and thinking, well, I don't really need to go and ask forgiveness because really they've never brought it up, and maybe they forgot it, or you know what else? Maybe, just possibly, maybe I dreamt it. Maybe it didn't really even happen. Okay. So we got to take care of it. We can't ignore it. So Matthew 5, if you go back just to that Matthew 5, that passage is basically saying before we cozy up to God on Sunday, we need to get right with the person that we have wronged Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, or Saturday first. There has to be reconciliation with us and them so that we can go before God with a clean and pure heart. Does anyone, I don't know if anyone would know this, but does anyone know, just raise your hand if you know the 8th step to recovery. The 8th step of recovery. Anybody know it? Okay. Well, in the 12 steps of recovery, the 8th step says, we made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. Now that is based around AA and stuff like that. Started off as a Christian group. It may not be today. Probably is. A lot of Christians are involved in AA, and a lot of Christians who've had addictions are part of AA. And I like this 8th step because it makes you write down all the things you've done to hurt people, and then after you've done that, which is hard enough, then it causes you to go and make amends, to go and take care of it with people. I can't even begin to share all the poison and the bitterness and the animosity and the pain that is caused in what is meant to be the safest place on earth, which is supposed to be our homes, when we are unwilling to say, I'm sorry, I apologize, or would you forgive me? Oh. The second thing I want to talk to you about today is there are 3 things we want to see happen. When we go to someone, there's 3 things we want to see happen. Doesn't matter who it is. It could be our mom, it could be our dad, it could be our spouse, it could be our grown child, it could be a co-worker, it could be a neighbor, it could be the preacher, it could be an elder, it could be a deacon, it could be you. If we're going to go and talk to someone, there's 3 things we want to see happen. And we should have this down so that we can accomplish all 3 things. The first thing is we want to seek to accomplish reconciliation. Jesus talked about reconciliation in Matthew 5. When a relationship is broken, whether it's here at church or at home or at work or with our parents or with our spouse, it amazes me, I don't know about you, but it amazes me when a relationship is broken, what the simple words, I'm sorry, will do to mend that relationship. And it amazes me, well, actually, it startles me to see what happens to the relationship when those two words aren't offered, ever. It's sad. They say, what do you know about it? Well, I know a little bit about it. I've been doing pastoral counseling for 30 of my 35 years in ministry, and I'm going to be working soon on my master's degree in pastoral counseling. And I'm just amazed at simple fixes. If it's simple, fix it. I'm sorry, forgive me. 2 words can make all the difference in a relationship if they've been hurt by you. But it just amazes me how it can take care of it, or how, when you never utter those words, how things dissolve. Second thing, seek to accomplish reconciliation, then seek to arrange restitution. Restitution is a biblical concept. If you go back to Zacharias, the wee little man, right? Zacchaeus, the wee little man. So be willing when you go and talk to somebody. Be willing when you've hurt them and you need to ask forgiveness. Be willing to make it right. Ask them, is there anything I can do to make this right between us? Is there anything I can do? Forgive me, and is there anything I can do? Within reason, of course. Yeah, the $1 million would really help. But is there anything I can do to make this right? I think about a story about a husband, a Christian man, who was very busy at work, and he was very busy in the yard. He loved working in the yard. I don't even like this story already. But he also liked to golf. Yeah, I'm into that. So he was busy at work. He loved to golf, and he liked to work in his yard, and he loved his wife and his children. But he made a habitual mistake of lying to his wife. He was very, very busy, so he'd say to his wife, hey, next week we're going to go out on a date night. The next week came around, and it didn't happen. Well, next month we're going to get away for a couple of days. We're going to the coast. And she's got plans for that, and then someone comes up, we can't do it. And he just continually made those those intentions, even though they were honorable, and even though he intended to follow up with them, he never did. And as a result, his wife became pretty upset with him, as you can imagine. And he sensed that, and he realized what he had done. He had sinned by lying to his wife. So he went to her, and he said, honey, I want to make this right. I want you to forgive me. And what can I do to make this right? And she said, I need you to take Thursday evenings. I know you're a busy man, but I need Thursday evenings at least 3 times a month for us either to go out for dinner, or for us to sit and hold hands and watch something on TV, or for us just to visit. I need Thursday nights. Will you do that? And he said, yes, I'll do that. And so, what happened from that is their relationship bonded and made it stronger. Because he was willing not to only reconcile, but to make some kind of restitution. What can I do to make this right? And that's especially important if someone will say, I won't forgive you. Then you can say, what can I do to make this right? And then third, when you're asking forgiveness, seek to achieve full restoration. It may seem a little bit like number 1, perhaps it is, but we want to seek full restoration if we can. And the truth is, remember this. If you're going to them because you've hurt them, just remember this. You caused it. You said it. You broke it. You hurt them. So it's really on us. We have to own up to that. So now our hope is that we can bring our brokenness to the person we offended and get the relationship back to where it was, the way it was supposed to be, the way it should be, and the way it was prior to our hurting them. And so by doing so, we can get the elephant, if you would, out of the room every time we're there. We got to be able to do that. The third thing, and the last thing we'll talk about this morning, is the tough part. We know what we should do. We know why we should do it. We know what we're going to look for. We know all those preliminary things. But now the tough part is asking for forgiveness. Asking for forgiveness. Well, if we did the wrong thing or said the wrong thing or failed to do the right thing, then what we have to do is we have to take responsibility for it. Responsibility has become a bad word in America. Nobody wants to be responsible for anything. Just do what you want. Don't be responsible. Don't work if you don't want to work. I've been looking to get a disability myself, and I was talking to Jamie about it the other day. I asked him if he'd testify before court that I would get a mental disability, and he said, sign him up as a witness. So I may not be here next week. Anyway, you're all my witnesses here. So anyway, but we got to be responsible. I have all these kids. I have all these kids, but I just don't want to be responsible for them. We can go on and on and on, I guess, and talk about responsibility. But here's the thing: as Christians, we need to be responsible people. That's why we pay our bills. That's why we do the things we're supposed to do. Is because we're responsible people. And so, if we did something wrong, take responsibility for it. Really, it wasn't because, and you can say it was, but it really wasn't because you were having a bad day. It wasn't because someone pushed you into the limit. It wasn't because your boss is on your back. It wasn't because the other person gave you no choice but to respond in anger. The truth is, when it's me or when it's you, it's because we chose to do something wrong. And that's the bottom line. If we want to experience reconciliation, you can't shift the blame to someone else. You can't say, Donita, would you forgive me? No, or she can't come to me and say, Alan, will you forgive me? And I'll say, yeah, I will if you can't do that. You gotta take responsibility. You have to own up to it. You look at the other person in the eye and you say to that person, I was wrong. I did something I shouldn't have done. I said something I shouldn't have said. There's no excuse. I'm asking you to forgive me. And that's why the third point is the tough part. That's tough. It's hard to do. We don't want to do that kind of stuff. But it's hard. But the truth is we'll never restore the relationship to where it once was if we don't take responsibility for our actions. We need to own it if we're going to get us both over it. We need to be the men and women of God that we're called to be, to take responsibility for what we may do wrong and the responsibility to make it right. If the process takes longer than 30 seconds, deal with it. Remember this, you set the wheels in motion. And if it takes longer than we'd like it to take, well, that's part of the price that we have to pay. Well, many who feel guilty about the way they've treated others. Husbands who feel guilty about the way they treated their wives. Wives who feel guilty for the way they treated their husbands. Parents who feel guilty for the way they've treated their kids. Kids who feel guilty for the way they've treated their parents. And on and on and on we can go. We can go around feeling guilty, and we can go around with all these obstacles between us, and what they'll do is solve nothing. They'll simply cause us to drift farther and farther and farther apart. But I want you to know things will never get better until we make the first move that Jesus is asking us to do, take ownership of our actions and take ownership of our responsibility, and go to that person and say, will you forgive me? Again, it's up to them if they will, but you have done what you need to do, and that honors God. Is he about done? Well, almost. In fact, I am almost done. As we look at these things that we talked about today, there's some pretty heavy-duty stuff here. Some things for us to think about this week. So, this week, would you consider making some plans, maybe setting aside a little time on your calendar, and be alone if you can, to make plans to talk with that person that you need to ask forgiveness from. Maybe you'll invite them over to your house for coffee. Maybe you'll go out and have a cup of iced tea with them, or you might have a one-on-one conversation somewhere with them and say, I am so sorry. I was so wrong. Will you forgive me? And what can I do to make this right? Maybe this will take place in a parking lot in another state. Or maybe at your own dining table with your own spouse or your own child. But the point is, it has to happen. for us to move forward in our spiritual lives. Well, that's not going to be the most favorite sermon you've heard all year, especially if you need to talk to someone about forgiveness. But as we come to communion, that's kind of what communion is about. It's about Jesus Christ giving his life for us, forgiving us. And one of the byproducts of him forgiving us is we get the opportunity to forgive each other. Why don't you bring up your team, whichever one of you are the team. I asked both of them this morning, so I guess I got it taken care of. So as we come to communion, the truth is, and I bet it's the same with you, that I am so very grateful when it comes to the rift that I had with God, the rift that I had in our relationship with God, that he sent his Son, Jesus Christ, to not ask me for forgiveness, but to make it possible for me to be forgiven. Isn't that wonderful? He didn't do anything wrong. Jesus didn't. He's incapable of doing anything wrong. It says, in him there was no sin found. But he did everything right to make our relationship tight by giving his blood on the cross. And because our relationship with Jesus can now be at peace because of his blood, the truth is my relationship with you and your relationship with me can be at peace as we do whatever it takes, just like Jesus did, to bring about reconciliation. What more could we have asked from Jesus besides to die? So as we partake today of the cup which represents his blood and the bread that represents his body, let's remember his love for us. Our love for him as we profess that to him in prayer. And his love, his undisputable love for that person that we need to go ask to forgive us.